In a world hungry for change, nonprofit impact matters more than ever. Yet every day, you're asked to do more with less. Less time, fewer resources, and tools that weren't even built for the way nonprofits actually work. What if you could do more with more? That's the promise of Bloomerang, the giving platform built for purpose. Bloomerang integrates fundraising, donor, and volunteer management into one intuitive platform. It connects your data to reveal real opportunity, showing you who's ready to give, when to reach out, and how to deepen every relationship. Because when your tools are built for purpose, your mission goes further. More connection, more confidence, more impact. Now that's more like it. Learn how you can do more with more at bloomerang.com. That's bloomerang.com. Now on to the show. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, hi, and welcome or welcome back to my loyal listeners to Nonprofit Nation. This is your host, Julia Campbell. Today, we're going to talk about nonprofit strategic plans, but we're going to talk about how they might fail is not in the strategy, but the process. So I'm here to talk with nonprofit consultant and author, Dr. Renee Rubin Ross, to go over her new book, Inclusive Strategic Planning for Nonprofits, and truly explain why nonprofits need more participatory, equity-centered approaches to planning, but also how inclusive strategic planning helps organizations not only build alignment, uncover overlooked opportunities, and most importantly, create plans that people actually implement. So, Renee, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Yay! So good to be back. I was on your podcast a few years ago with my colleague Crystal Cherry talking about boards and equity. And yeah, so it's really nice to come back for another conversation. And wow, there's a lot has happened. It is good to see you. And yeah, thank you for hosting.
This is something that I am going through here in the school district. I'm on the school board and we're actually undergoing a strategic planning process. So I am really ready, willing, want to learn.
We'll give you the 5-step method.
I have the book. I have the book.
Yes.
And I'm actually I want to highlight it. I'm going to read it fully through first and highlight everything and then give it to the superintendent, who I'm sure has nothing else to do. But
awesome.
We are going through that for the next 5 years of what we want the district to look like, what we want the community to look like, and what we want student outcomes to be. And I think this topic is just so important. I think a lot of people are going through this right now, whether you're starting a process, in a process, did a process. So let's dive right in to your new book, Inclusive Strategic Planning for Nonprofits. I have a twofold question. What inspired you to write this book right now? And then what exactly is inclusive strategic planning?
Yeah, thank you so much. So we work with many nonprofit leaders leading plans in Northern California and around the United States. And strategic planning can be a little bit complicated. So I had been writing my blog for a while and I just thought, okay, if I take all the questions that my clients ask, there's a lot to understand at the beginning that really helps to demystify the process. Yeah. So initially it was just like, I'm going to write it all down and I'm going to have something that I can hand to clients or potential clients that will help them to feel more empowered about planning. And then as I actually went through this process where I did some drafts, I had these beta readers who read the book I had, in the end, about 30 beta readers. And the comment from the beta readers was, this is interesting, but who is this for? And is it only for clients of the Ross Collective, or is there a wider audience for the book? And I had to think about that for a little while. I was like, well, we do great work, but we serve maybe, 10 orgs or 10 to 20 organizations a year. But I mean, this is material where if shifted around a little bit, people could learn how to do this themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I did, in the end, shift the tone of the book to be much more DIY. Here are the steps that you can do that, that leaders out there of smaller organizations who might not be working with a consultant can learn about this, and this could guide the process that they do. So that's kind of how it all came out. And it was so fabulous to be in conversation with these beta readers, as really it was an inclusive process of writing the book. I didn't just, it didn't just come from me. It actually came from the same kind of principles that we use to lead conversations, which are, people learn in different ways and people come with different kinds of questions. And just because I think something is interesting, other people have other things that are interesting. And so the book actually it has that kind of collaborative dimension to it.
I love that. And I think what's so interesting is that, inclusive strategic planning is different from more traditional strategic planning. Can you tell us in sort of what way?
Yeah. So there are a couple books out there on strategic planning. Why write another one? So the books that I have on my shelf that are very good and chart out some of the process, what's missing from them is this idea that people's voices matter in planning, right? And that's a key idea. And it really matters that you bring in the people who are going to be doing the work into building the vision and building the goals. And that's actually what's in this process that's described in the book. And the book really tells you how to do that. Why does it matter? I think too, but people, I teach a class and I do workshops on strategic planning. Mm-hmm. People have a lot of trauma around. I think you could call it strategic planning trauma, where it's like, someone handed me a plan. I have no idea I have no idea. I don't know where this came from. Right. I don't know what it means. I don't know why this is on paper here, and I'm not doing it. And so there is another way, which is to say, what do you, staff and board, want to put in place? What do we, as a result of our actions? And that's really the question that's at the center of this. And then, what are realistic goals for us to implement?
Exactly. I think that this is so important. It's something, I'm seeing in my work right now with the school district, just that in previous years and previous iterations, the school committee just created a strategic plan and then sort of lent it on down, like the 10 commandments to the schools and the administrators. And of course, what the previous iterations of the school committee quickly found was, if teachers are not invested, if administrators are not invested, if students, if parents, if families, if taxpayers, there's all so many stakeholders that need to be involved. If you're just handing it to somebody and saying, here's your roadmap, it's not going to be as well received and probably not as well implemented.
Yeah. And I have this post on that I just put out recently around 4 myths around strategic planning. And I think one of them is the document is the most important thing. And so there are a lot of people who are, and even, people have come to us and said, potential clients, can you just write a strategic plan for us? I could. It would go really quick. Here, we could just, send it to ChatGPT.
Exactly. There's AI tools that can do that.
30 seconds, we will have your strategic plan. But what's missing in that, right? What's missing in that is actually what you just described is, hey, my voice. Yeah, my voice is part of the plan. My perspective, what I see, what I'm identifying as the needs based on where I sit in the community, is included in that plan. And that's inclusive strategic planning.
What are some of the other myths that you see?
Oh, yeah. One of them, it's a really key one for these days, has to do with that it's only a 3 to 5 year strategic right? And I think that what we're seeing a lot now is, we are working with some organizations that are building these 3-year plans. But for example, we're also working with a lot of organizations, or working with a couple that have hit some budget cuts, and they're not going to be doing a 3-year plan. They may be doing a 1 or 2-year plan. But the whole idea that people need to know is strategic planning can be smaller or bigger depending on where you are and your readiness and your capacity and your how much time you have, your budget, all that. And I do have in the book this matrix, which focuses on some questions to ask. Are we ready for planning now, to get your group to reflect?
Exactly. And that's so important.
Yeah.
And your book talks about the 5 steps to creating a strategic plan. So could you walk us briefly through those steps?
Yeah. So we have this. It's so funny. I'm pulling up my little 5-step spiral. Whoa, so it starts with this is on page 29. Yeah. Starts with kickoff, discovery, prioritization, planning, and implementation. Right. And so again, just kind of going back to what I said before, the idea is part of this is to be able to read the book or be able to understand more about the process. Not like you necessarily have to be an expert, but just even by understanding, wow, I see the path that we're on. It's a little bit more calming. So the book describes each phase. Kickoff is actually really critical because that's setting it all up. Who's involved? Who are we going to be? Who's going to be part of the strategic planning retreat? Who's going to be involved in interviews and focus groups and potentially a survey? How are people participating in planning? How long is it going to take? Right. All that. So just kind of answering those questions and creating clarity from the beginning so that, again, people feel a sense of calm and excitement around this.
What is kind of a sample timeline? I know you talk about it in the book.
Yeah. So for a 3 to 5 year plan, which a lot of orgs now are doing 3-year plans, I would say somewhere like it's really 4 to 9 months. 4 would be really ambitious. It depends how much data people want to collect. But we have done that in the past. And it also depends how much time people have to invest in. So are you going to be able to add a bunch of meetings to your staff and board, or is it going to take longer just because you want to have some time for everything to, for reflection, for everything to kind of mull a little, which is important.
So you emphasize that who is in the room really does matter. Can you talk about maybe who should be in the room and why each of these groups is so critical?
Yeah. And again, I have this diagram in the book on page 55. These are 3 groups that are involved in planning: deciders, builders, and sharers. So 3 concentric circles. Most processes have deciders. That's pretty obvious. It's kind of the people who are making the final decisions. It is really helpful to get clarity on that. Do not have 20,000 deciders or, even 15 deciders, because you will basically struggle to make decisions. And then the sharers, a lot of processes, a lot of planning has sharers too. That might be people who are doing those interviews or focus groups. It's really the builders, that middle group, that is a little bit different in this process. And that is, for organizations, it could be the whole board and staff that is weighing in on these questions of what do we want to see in place in the next 3 to 5 years as a result of our actions, and also building the goals. So, so there's lots of rounds of, in this kind of process, of creating something and then getting feedback on it to see, all right, does this really hold with our values and what we're trying to do in these times?
So are the deciders, builders, and sharers, are they in the room at the same time?
Great. That's a great question. So the sharers are usually consulted in the discovery work, but they're most likely not in the strategic planning retreat. But the deciders and builders are at that retreat, and so really get to say, to weigh in on the future of the organization. And I want to say that one of the really interesting things, like people say to me, well, do you ever get, someone asked, do you ever get people working on goals around recruitment and retention? And I'm like, yes, pretty much every organization that we have worked with has created some kind of goal around, benchmarking salaries, making sure the organization is a good place to work, creating professional development. And why? Well, when you ask people, what do we want to see in place? It's an organization that we feel really good about working at, as well as all the great work that we're doing. So I find that really fascinating. It's almost like the
culture is so important.
Yeah. And it emerges naturally, right? You don't have to, it's not about forcing this into the plan. This is actually what people want. They want a great culture. They want to feel good about their work.
How do we get more sharers? I think that's something that organizations struggle with. They want more community participation, but they just don't know how to get it or where to look or how to start.
I think at the beginning saying, who do we need to talk to? And there's some kind of balance, right? You want to get a lot of input, but you can't act on everything that people say. And this key idea of strategic planning is there's no perfect plan out there, right? It's actually the people in the room who are doing the work. So it's really like those deciders and builders who get to say, hey, this is where our energy is based on the information we have. This is what we want to do. And this is how we want to go forward. So so I do think taking some time to step back and say, who do we need to talk to? Right. And sometimes like for a membership organization, it might be, we need to survey our members to ask them some key questions because they're part of our future, right? They're part of our present, past, and future. Is there something specific where you notice that being a challenge?
I noticed, we always say like here, like the squeaky wheels, like we always hear from the squeaky wheels, but we don't really hear from kind of the silent majority and sending out surveys and doing community meetings and, we've been very intentional in the places that we're showing up like in person because we want to make sure we get as wide and as deep, like a breadth of viewpoints, but we tend to only get emails from like 5 people. So I don't know how to really avoid that.
Yeah. And I think some of that, it's interesting with certain organizations, it may be overcoming, I don't feel like I was listened to in the past. And so I'm not sure that I want to take the time to weigh in now. So how
rebuilding that trust.
Yeah.
No, I think that's so important. And that leads me to a big point of the book, which is authentic participation versus performative inclusion. Like what's the difference and how can we avoid just being performative?
Again, I think part of the idea of creating more transparency in the process and just sort of in saying, here are the different roles that people are going to have so that people understand, here's the steps that we're going to be doing in planning. Here are some places, and each chapter actually has some points around communications, right? So that you could, if you kick off your plan and then you can at that time be letting your people around you know, whether that's clients, community, donors, staff, partners, hey, we're doing planning now and we may be consulting with you in these ways. So I think just kind of being direct about, all right, we don't have 20 deciders. We have a couple of deciders, but we also have a lot of people who are those builders who are co-creating this vision for what the organization is going to be.
I love that. Co-creators.
Thank you.
That's a great idea. What advice do you have for organizations that want to be more inclusive, but they fear opening themselves up to criticism or conflict or making the process just kind of slow down?
Well, it does take longer. I'm not going to, it takes longer than the 30 seconds from ChatGPT.
Right. I could give you a strategic plan in 1 minute and not even know your organization, but is it going to be worthwhile implementing it? No.
We could just start building all these strategic plans, new business idea.
I know.
So I think, again, this is where taking some time to think about that design can be really helpful. So in the same way that when you do board recruitment, you can use a matrix to say who's in the room right now and who's not in the room. And given our values, what do we need to do about that? Mm-hmm. Right. And the same thing with planning. Who's going to be in the room? Are there other voices that need to be represented in each of the different parts of building the plan? Creating that clarity to talk about participation.
And I think nonprofits are so hesitant to get this kind of broad stakeholder feedback because they worry about being criticized or polarizing, or they worry about controversy or pushback or, and they don't want to hear negative things. How can we get out of our comfort zone with that?
So, it's really interesting. I think we've led many focus groups. Sometimes we are hearing from raving fans, right? And then sometimes we're not. There might be a range. There might be some good so I'm just thinking about one organization that we worked with where what they were trying to do was really challenging. They had some people that loved their work, and then they had some people that had a lot of criticism. And what we had to say was, we are writing this all down. The leadership of the organization will receive everything that you say. And full disclosure, it's not all going to be actionable, right? And that's just like being honest, right? They will take all of this under consideration, and they're, given their resources and their own, energy and where they want to go, they are building their plans. So I think just being clear about that. But again, I would say, the more that if in general, in organizational change, you got to name it to tame it, right? If you trying to sweep something under the rug, it doesn't work too well. Yeah.
What role do boards need to play in this inclusive strategic planning process?
Yeah. So we've worked with organizations that have included the board in different ways, and it kind of depends on the culture of the organization. We led a process where it was the whole staff of like 50, and then there was another 15 board members, and they all came to the retreat. And it was really pretty amazing. Almost everybody, we heard almost everybody's voice during the day in different ways. So sometimes the board will come and be part of those builders. Other times it's the staff that is building the plan, and then we'll share this, a couple of those staff members, the leadership team will be sharing that with the board for their feedback. But usually the board is involved in fundraising specifically. And so we'll say, okay, make sure that when you get to those goals around fundraising, pulling in the board to make sure that the goals feel accurate and right. For smaller organizations that, if you're like all volunteer run, it might just be the board and a couple staff people who are building your strategic plan.
If you have the plan, how can we encourage staff and boards to treat it as more like a live document and not something that sort of gathers dust on a shelf?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, such a good question. And actually that is why the last step is implementation, right? So that that part of planning is really figuring out exactly what you're saying, Julia. How are we bringing this alive? How we do that is to build a 1-year action plan where you say, okay, given all these goals, what's the work that we're going to be doing in the first year? And so we break that down and have the leaders figure that out. What are we going to do in the first year? What are we going to do in the first quarter? And then it goes even more granular. How are we getting that into our organizational work plan? Whatever system you have, but whether that's, your Asana, project management, and just making sure that, exactly what you're saying. We're not coming back in a year to say, oh, did we do this? That this is something that you are checking in, whether it's every month, every quarter, to really see, are we on track?
Okay. So revisiting it pretty frequently and just seeing if we're on track to reach our goals. I think it's great because it's a roadmap, and this is how we viewed it at the school board. No matter who's on the school board, no matter who the superintendent is, we've created this with the community, with community input, and it's our GPS and roadmap to where we're going. So love the superintendent, and he's never leaving. But if he left, someone else could pick up this document, hopefully. Is that sort of the goal of the plan?
Yeah. I mean, the goal is that it's a living document, right? I love the idea of if you are able to create a dashboard, that's another thing that's really powerful, right? You might be saying, okay, we're going to raise $500,000 in contributions in this coming year. And so what would be green, what would be yellow, what would be red? And you can start tracking that along the way. So that's one thing, that this is a living document. But then the other piece is we know that things change, that things happen, and so part of it is actually coming back to it and saying, hey, we made this goal 3 months ago or 6 months ago, but something else happened. And wow, we've certainly had a lot of unexpected events, right? So the point isn't, oh my gosh, I wrote it down. Now we got to follow it line by line. That's constraining. The point is that this is a living document.
I think that's incredibly important and something that the traditional approaches don't really touch on.
Yeah.
So what do you hope that readers ultimately take away from the book? Like, what is one mindset shift that you're hoping they're going to take away?
We believe in our work, and I think this came out in the last conversation that we had with you too, that people's voices matter. And I think this is a time where a lot of hard things are happening. We might feel like our voices don't matter. And this is a way to design into our organizations the idea that my perspective is important, that diverse perspectives are important, that people who are close to the work need to weigh in on what's going to happen next. So I think that sense of, I can do this. People care about what I have to say in my organization and in my community. We want that. We want people to be out there saying, I need to speak up on what I see.
If there are disagreements around the direction of the plan or the goals, because I would imagine sometimes it could probably get very emotional or heated, or there would be people in the community that want it to go in a different direction, but the staff wants it to go in that direction.
Yeah.
So how do you handle like mediation in that way? I'm an expert.
So the fact is that as facilitators, people come to us with a lot of concerns about conflict. I won't say there's no conflict, but in this by designing a participatory process where you bring people together in the room and you have them build this, kind of consensus workshop where they're seeing each other's ideas, they're talking to one another, people feel like their ideas are represented in what is built. The level of conflict just goes way down. When you have conflict is when people feel like I'm being ignored, I'm not heard, right? And so that's something about, a participatory process is going to feel good and decrease the conflict by 95%.
I agree. I think a lot of times, especially on social media, people just want to be heard. And sometimes I see conflict happening on a specific page, and then it's addressed like, oh, I hear you. I'm listening to you. I value your opinion. And then it's kind of diffused. So I think you're right. People feel ignored. And maybe, like you were saying, the bigger problem is we feel our voice isn't being heard. So what gives you hope right now in this world? In this world, I'm asking all my guests because we need some hope.
I feel when we sit with nonprofit leaders and we see what they are trying to build, what we are all trying to build. There are so many people who are working towards great stuff for our communities. We in our work at the Ross Collective, we talk a lot about equity, and there are a lot of organizations that are still on the journey, that still understand that we need to build a world in which all people can thrive. We're not there yet. And that they want to do this. They want, community, they want more community support and healing. So I think that this is getting a lot of, great response. People want to do this and want to find out how to be more inclusive, because it feels good, right? It feels good to be heard, right? And it feels good to be more open. yeah, that gives me hope, even in these really hard times.
Right. And it feels good to be, I think, building something together, even if we have, differing opinions on how to get there, having that shared goal, that shared North Star of what we want to achieve, like who we want to be, what we're trying to do. That is going to help really navigate those tough conversations about the nitty gritty and who's doing what and, where the money is being allocated, because that's always a big stickler.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just going back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is like, okay, people process information in different ways, right? So some people are really focused on, okay, I'm going to look at every line of that budget, right? And then other people are like, what's the vision? What are we trying to do? And so getting focused on both of those things while you're doing planning is so important, right? And where you come out with a plan that says, hey, we're just going to focus on A, B, and C, right? For a school, we're just going to focus on success for all students. And our strategies to do that are A, B, C. And then it's like, okay, how are we doing this? And we can keep coming back to it. So you can't have 8,000 things to focus on. That's just like, that's just chaos. So yeah.
I agree. And I've been seeing that just in my my work with clients too. I do a lot of work with marketing professionals at nonprofits and fundraising professionals, and getting everyone on the same page and doing what I call like couples counseling between the marketing and fundraising departments, but just kind of getting everyone on the same page. Like, this is what we're all working towards this. We're all trying to accomplish this. So you might have a different idea of like the number of emails to send, but at least can we agree on this is where we're going. This is what we want to achieve. The tactics will come later, and we can negotiate around the specific tactics. But if people are not all on the same page of that North Star, then nothing is going to get done and no one will be invested.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because sometimes there are like different goals that are very much build on each other. Like I'm thinking about, we worked with this recently with this workforce development organization. They wanted to keep strengthening their programs, and they also wanted to support the young people that were in their programs. And these things were not, they're not at all mutually exclusive. It's very much like, as your participants feel good and feel like they have the, mental health support, they're going to also do better work and feel good about, being part of the program. So it seems kind of win-win, but it does go to, okay, what are the actions we need to take to be successful in our work, and just kind of zooming back to get clarity on that.
Well, I know a lot of people are going to want to connect with you, Dr. Renee Rubin Ross, and tell them where they can connect with you and where they can get the book.
Yeah. So the Ross Collective is our website, and I do send out a newsletter twice a month on nonprofit strategy, racial equity, and leadership. And there is a link to get the book. You can get it on our website, on Bookshop, Amazon. So a couple different options for purchasing it. Oh, I want to mention this new news is that it was reviewed by Kirkus, and Kirkus review says, get it. So
amazing.
I already said get it, but Kirkus reviews. I need to get the word out about that. That came in like last week.
Love that. And there's so much advanced praise in this book.
Yeah.
There's just so many tactical, practical applications. And I love, it's almost like a workbook that you can just kind of follow step by step, which I really like. So I would encourage everyone, go to the Ross Collective. I will put the link in the show notes to the book. But can they connect with you on LinkedIn if they have
questions? Thank you for that. I am on LinkedIn. I would be happy to connect. Let me know who you are. But yes, definitely connect on LinkedIn. I do share a lot of stuff there. I'm sure we've had some conversations on LinkedIn. That's probably my primary one right now.
That's my primary as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Renee, for being on the show again, and for telling us all about your sort of new methodology and how we can use it.
Thanks so much. So good to be here.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.